Welcome to the Casting Forward podcast, brought to you by Clubmate, the all-in-one management platform for clubs and fisheries. We'll be talking all things fish and fishing with new guests every episode from the world of angling, including fishery managers to some of the best anglers in the country, finding out what they're up to, advice for your fishery, and thoughts on the future of the sport.
Welcome back, guys, and by the magic of television, as they used to say, we're recording in the dark now. Technical errors, it seems to be, with bad weather at the moment. I don't know when this is going to be released, but we're right in the middle of that November storms, and I think Adam lost his Wi-Fi today, didn't you, Adam? So we're going to carry on now.
It sounded like I lost my wife. Yes, it was a bit of an outage. I think we were talking about 2026 and looking ahead, and but one of the things I just wanted to go backwards on was a point that I made that we both agreed with wholeheartedly, I think, was that, yes, it's a trade that we choose to be in that doesn't have good rates of remuneration for any, certainly not for the foot soldiers that are out there doing it, just for the people at the top echelons of the companies. But notwithstanding that, I choose to do it, you choose to do it. It is far better in my experience and far more enriching to do a job that you love doing, even if it's for a low or modest wage, than getting paid a big deal of money for a job you hate doing, because that is not going to add value or enrichment to your life at all. So for anyone watching this, I'm not saying don't come into the angling industry, do what you love, but just don't expect high pay.
Yeah, I mean, the intention of what we were talking about in no way is supposed to deter people from doing it, because the more people we do, the more jobs are going to create themselves. Absolutely. And like you say, and this touches back to what we spoke about quite in depth about the mental health side of things. Like, you know, your life is going to be a lot happier with job satisfaction. And, you know, as a result, your relationships are going to be better. Your relationship with your kids will be better, and you'll all round enjoy yourself a lot more. And then, you know, there's an old saying about money not making people happy. And I think you'll feel a lot wealthier as a satisfied, you know, with work-life satisfaction than you will in a job you hate. And, you know, as I said, you know, we spoke about earlier kind of offline, you know, it took me 15 plus 20 years of doing this for free, you know, volunteering for my local club, bailiffing on the banks, running a club, things like that. To the extent that it was nearly a full-time job in addition to a full-time job. You end up doing 20, 30, 40 hours a week for nothing, for the passion, you know, for your sport. But after that, and many people would never have believed me and kind of, you know, lost faith, you know, after that, along came the career, you know, then came the actual, you know, paid to fish, as they say, but certainly paid to work in the sport of angling. There's very little paid to fish. Something I find really amazing is that if you are an angler, and certainly one that works in angling as we do, I don't know about you, but everyone in your family always says that everything stinks of fish. And you think, I'm not sure how that's possible because I've not actually been fishing. It's psychological, I think, mate.
Yeah, I think it probably is. I don't actually get that, but I am aware that, probably because I don't catch much, but I am aware it's a thing that is commonplace. But yeah. There was quite a funny thing going around on the gram fairly recently of an attractive young lady saying something about why does he always go off fishing? He comes back and he smells of damp. Everything smells of damp. Why is he doing it? And I think a lot of partners could probably relate to that, let alone when you get to the flavours and the maggots. Yeah,
I don't know whether it's I never know whether it's a positive or a negative. If you get to the stage that they tell you to go fishing, I never know whether it's good or bad, to be fair.
Well, I think in a lot of cases it means Leroy's coming round. Watch out.
Well, as long as you know, I'm happy catching a 50, mate. So, all good. So, moving on and catching up from earlier, we were talking about the future, and I know you said let's not limit to 2026, because quite correctly so. And this is the same with running clubs and fisheries. You can't really achieve anything in a 1-year project anymore. You know, if you want a successful business, don't make, you know, single year plans, because you won't achieve much, and you know you really can't make much traction. So let's go back to the future of Penning and Penning's Carp Academy. Let's go again.
Well, to carry on principally, in your words, making content for the non-fiction section of Waterstones. So that's going to be the priority, keeping the positive energy as high as possible, and just to keep doing it until hopefully we get, well, it's not we, is it? Because it's just me, but until I get big enough that I can bring other people on board, principally Chris, the camera guy, give a role for a media person, and also the fact that we put out a film every week, and we just put one out an hour ago, is probably not sustainable long term. You know, as I said, we're into year 4 now of doing that, and so what I want to do is we'll still drop content every week, but it will be somebody else helping me produce the content. And so finding that angler who is eminently relatable, who's ticks all the boxes that we need in terms of delivering informative educational content, who is also a good angler and a great communicator, is something that, you know, we're not in a position where I could do that now, but very much would like to get there. And then,
do you think the aim is a partner then, or guests? Are you aiming more for, like, you know, a second full-time partner angler, so to speak, or are you looking at having guests to kind of offload the, you know, changeable guests, so to speak? Which route do you want to go down?
Yeah, I think probably initially it would be paying somebody a rate to make X number of films a year, and just loosely tie it up like that. I would have thought something like that.
You can kind of get the same ethos then, can't you? Like, guests are great, but it's hard to get maybe the same track and the same style. And, you know, if you're working with a single partner, at least then you can really hunt for the right person that's going to have the same ethos and the same passion and the same standards.
Exactly. I would continue to have guests and go out with guests as we have done since the beginning, but somebody who I can just leave to create their own content along the veins of there may be new tiers of content that we may uncover, but somebody that I can just say, look, your remit is to do 1 or 2 films a month. Chris will go out with you, and beyond that, I think also I think, Robert, it'd be really nice to ultimately, I mean, I don't have a business plan, and I'm not really a particularly ambitious person. I just like things to be nice and comfortable. But if we ever did get to a stage where we were serious, in inverting quotations, then I would like to develop umbrella academies, or other academies within the umbrella, I should say. Principally something like a barbel academy, maybe a fly fishing academy, and I'd like to try and grow that educational element through other branches of fishing.
That's fantastic. That was exactly what I was going to ask you, to be fair, was that kind of multi-species. Do you think you're going to kind of reach the carp, at the pinnacle of carp, so to speak, and move into other, obviously there's a lot of anglers in the country.
Yeah, there are, and we certainly haven't reached the pinnacle of our potential reach, nowhere near it. But if we ever did get to a significant portion, then developing those other academies would definitely be something I'd be really fascinated in doing, and sourcing those relevant experts within their fields. And then ultimately, even beyond that, you'll think I'm probably crazy, since I said I'm not an ambitious person, but I would love to have Bass Academy in America.
The world. I knew you were going to say that. We're going to take over the world.
That would be the biggest one, because bass fishing is enormous, isn't it?
It's ridiculous. It's something it's something we've kind of had one eye on for, a year or two, not in any kind of serious way, but from a business point of view, when you're providing software for clubs and fisheries, you look at things like the bass market. And I'm not being funny, Adam. Over here, you fish a carp match or any kind of match, and you win 50 quid. You go over there and you win a house.
Yeah.
And do you remember? I'm sure you probably saw it. Those guys that got caught cheating, shoving lead weights down the fish, and they'd won like 80 grand boats and like houses and stuff like that. But from an audience perspective, and it's obviously, inverted commas, cool. It's fast paced, it's cool, it's edgy. It's a bit more sporty than our style of fishing.
Yeah.
But going the other way, and this is what really interests me. And obviously, we're a multidiscipline business and really passionate throughout the sport. The one thing, and this becomes a little bit political again, I think one of the challenges is we're such a disparate sport. You know, carp anglers don't like, match anglers don't like, pike anglers don't like everyone else. And someone like yourself has got the kind of reputation and platform and already a following within carp that making that an umbrella into other styles of fishing is a great way to kind of give them a leg up. I mean, the one that really stands out is fly. You know, fly fishing has still got that reputation of being quite elitist and being quite expensive and, you know, inaccessible. And if you could do Penning's Fly Academy and make fly fishing kind of accessible and cool and show some normal anglers going fly fishing and the basics, and the straight hair rig, the hair rig of fly fishing, a hook length and a hook, but of fly fishing, I think that would be not only from a business plan point of view, but that would be a kind of admirable goal. I think that screams to me that's achievement. That does.
Well, thank you. I think it would be hard to not bring out my inner Tourette's, for want of a better expression, because fly fishing to me has always been a way of making an art form out of catching the world's most stupid fish. So when you say about going back to just like simple basic tactics, well, I would say, right, Fly Fishing Academy is going to be showing you all about how to catch as many trout as you can carry in a day on floating crust. Because or a worm, because we all know.
I was going to say, if you want to,
is just designed to make it harder.
Yeah, if you want to go down to the basics, you'd take a meth spinner and a bit of bread, wouldn't you? To be fair, and that would be about it. But it's the same as there's so many areas of this sport where I think what we've done is create a sport to make life harder. Same with I always think the same of the big competitions. They pick the worst hours of the day to fish for the most fish. They fish in the burning sunshine from 10 till 4.
Peter Drennan used to say that to me. He said, like, why are matches through 10 till 4 in July when it's I know evening matches, certainly in Oxford when I was there, became a bit of a thing, or have always been a bit of a thing, but your main bread and butter matches, as you said, are
it's really hard to convince people otherwise as well. So it kind of screams to you that convenience is more important, really.
Yeah.
Because we started running a kind of evening series on the river near me, and it was just a bit of fun. It started off as a bunch of lads from the tackle shop, and there were about half a dozen, 6 to 8 of us. And we do literally like I can't remember how long it was, 2-3 hour match. And it was literally bomb it down the river. You'd already drawn at the shop kind of thing, bomb down the river, one rod on a chair. And then, of course, it was a little bit fun, and we posted a few results, and then a few people get interested, and then it's 10, and then it's 20, then it's 30, and then the guys that turned up were trying to set up like 6 top kits, and like 6, and we were ready in like 30 seconds. Like, we got a ready-made rod, ready rod set up, and we were just like, bomb a feeder out for a few bream, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh no, it's not convenient anyway. You can't get ready in that time. Can we move it during the day? I was like, well, that's kind of the point, really. But yeah, the amount of matches that I've seen where I've walked around in the morning and the fish are rolling, as they do, early hours of the morning. And I've seen hundreds of them rolling, and you've had to walk around just to make sure everything's okay. And then, as soon as the whistle blows, flat cut, it's a mirror. It's an absolute mirror. And then just about 3:30, matches finishing at 4, you just see one roll. Yes. And then as everyone's packing away, and there's just fish like dolphins, rolling over. Yeah. And I think it's true across a lot of areas of this sport. Fly fishing, match fishing, even predator fishing. I think we try, and it's more of a, hold my beer. What's the most stupid lure I could make to catch a pike on, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you could probably do best on a bit of tinfoil, to be fair. But what is the wackiest lure? Like, you see people going out now with, and you would probably know this back from your kind of Pro Logic days. And obviously at the time, Savage Gear, you got bats and frogs and rats and mice and
rats,
all kinds of wacky creatures. Anyway, back on topic. That sounds like a fantastic plan, and I seem to remember we spoke about it probably a year ago. We were talking about the Umbrella Academy, so I'm glad to see that the thought still kind of stayed in your mind. But again, like, time flies, doesn't it? All of a sudden, it's at the end of 2025. Do you feel busy? Do you feel busy when you're doing it?
Busy?
Yeah. Does it feel mental, or do you enjoy it so much you don't notice? Or
I think that definitely, and I'm very laid back by nature, so I don't tend to get stressed or feel like things are really getting on top. I suppose the only times I ever can remember getting stressed with Carp Academy, where I was really breaking out, was if I'm doing a live event and the internet isn't working, and then I think, oh, I've got X number of people waiting for me. I have this phobia about inconveniencing people, like they're waiting for me. So generally in life, and I did get really, really stressed when we had some of those sort of gremlin malfunctions. But generally,
There's a lot of pressure, isn't there, when you're on live? Because we do a lot of kind of live webinars and stuff, and like it must be worse for you, to be fair, because we're offering a free service essentially. It's kind of add-on content, but obviously, and I don't know whether you always see it this way, but people have essentially invested in you. From a Pedding's Carp Academy point of view, do you still get that feeling that, oh God, people are paying for me, kind of thing? Do you still get that kind of subscription feeling that you think, well, I've got to keep them?
I think it's probably most similar to the attitude and outlook I had when we were talking earlier about tutorials. So my complete modus operandi is to make sure that my client leaves me totally satisfied and then some. And it's the same with X number of subscribers, I guess. I want to make sure that they get the best that I can give them. So that is always on my mind, that I don't want to cut corners, or even though I by my own admission, I'm a bit lackadaisical and disorganized. The actual stuff that I do put my heart and soul into it. It's whether whatever I'm doing, whether we're out trying to crack a venue we've never set foot on before and conditions are hard, or whether it's coping with filming my own stuff in the dark, in the rain, as I was earlier this week, when you catch fish and you've got to do it all on your own, albeit at a fairly low technical level, but you still need to deliver the same as in a live event. When we do live Q&As, it's the same for everything. I think it's just, I pride myself on us being the lowest cost for the highest amount of content out there. As far as I know, certainly in carp fishing, no one's putting out weekly content for anywhere near the price that we do. And I also pride myself on a shoestring, making that as good as I can look myself in the eye. And it's one of these things, Rob, that having worked in the industry, I've seen firsthand the element of carp tax, and I know you've worked you've had your own tackle shop. So I know, I always remember back to something that Peter Drennan said to me, that he said, ultimately only the people in the company really know how many of these swivels actually cost to put in a packet. And he said, you could within reason charge a lot more. He said, but always be honest with your pricing and don't rip people off. And that's always stayed with me. And I've seen a lot of companies not adhere to that basic mantra of just honest, fair pricing. And I think really for us, we've only put our price up by £1 in 4 years, or 3 and a bit years now. And that was purely just to pay for the app.
I was going to say that would be because most people don't realise the difference in cost between having a web-based streaming service and an app.
Absolutely.
and it is monumental, and kind of only adding £1 to your subscription probably means you've lowered your margins. I guess I don't need you to tell us all kind of thing, but I'd imagine you've probably lowered your profit margin to have that app. To be fair,
we have. I'm obsessed with giving people value for money. And we could have gone up to $9.99, $8.99, but really, if I was honest with myself, I wouldn't say that's. I'm just not comfortable with it. Is the bottom line. So I'll keep it as lean and as fair and square for people as I can.
It's kind of that Weatherspoons model, and everyone always says about how is Weatherspoons so successful, and the honest answer is that they still charge a fair price for a pint of beer, and there's and the guy's not some kind of multi-trillionaire. He's just a keen businessman, and the price of beer is still the price of a pint of beer. It's not beer taxed.
Absolutely.
I can't believe it. I mean, I'm making me sound really old now, but you go and someone says a pint of beer is like £5.50.
Yeah.
I still, in my head it's still £2. It's in my head
it would be cheap, Rob.
Well, apparently so. But, in my head, I remember when I was in my kind of going days, so to speak, as a teenager, when I was 18 years old, that I used to drink a bit of the old John Smith's, and it was £1.80 a pint. And that seems as timeless, eons ago now. If I told that to anyone, they'd say, "All right, Grandpa, I can't slow down." And I remember the first time I ever went to a club and someone told me a bottle of beer was £3, and I nearly fell over. But that is just that model. And I think, talking about Peter Drennan, obviously, not going to hark on the topic for too long, but that I always noticed, especially when I was in the tackle trade, that the whole Drennan group was always fairly priced, and it was always kind of slightly lower than a lot of the other brands, and and that lent itself to the everyday angler, because the standard pack of hooks was just a bit cheaper than the other hooks, and a pack of swivels, you might as well get your bulk ones from Drennan because they were slightly cheaper, but it was a good swivel. It worked. It clearly worked, and obviously it's a business that's still going and still succeeding. So you can't argue with it, can you? Fair price and fair value wins a fair business. So that's
Absolutely.
exactly it's really paying off for Penning's Carp Academy.
Thank you. Do you mind if I open a Guinness while we're talking?
No, you go right ahead. It's
Friday night and all that.
It's a tiring thing on a 12-hour podcast, isn't it, Adam? I always think it's what I've always wondered, what is the world record podcast, to be fair, and I'm sure it's probably something ridiculous like 900 hours or something. There'll be someone that's streaming forever with matches on their eyes, something like that. But
I think that's another good thing, it's again delivering that value for money, so I watch a lot of the Joe Rogan podcasts, and they're about 3 hours every time. That's good bang for your buck, isn't it? It's the same if you go and see a Springsteen gig. You get 3.5 hours of good quality music.
Obviously, it's really popular these days, and we've spoken about this personally, but, short form content is massive now. Cheers. The older doom scrolling, as they call it, you just scroll through your shorts and stuff like that. Now, I don't know whether it is just me being old fashioned, but I would like to say there's still a market for it, but I still love a long form piece of content. I can happily sit and listen to 3 or 4 hours of a podcast, and certainly filming them, especially with people like yourself and various others, the time just disappears. And I hope and I think it's so, because I've even sat listening to my own podcast and got lost, sit there listening away. So I hope it still has its appeal, and I don't mean our podcast, but I hope that carries on, and that long form media doesn't die out like the test match kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I hope long form media stays popular.
It's not just that. It's the whole media landscape has changed beyond recognition, hasn't it? Not obviously in terms of social media, but the fact, as we mentioned earlier, that now there are just 2 magazines, and you've only got to go back to the turn of the century, and there were probably 12.
And obviously, and no one can ever convince me otherwise, competition breeds success. If you've got more competition, you're all biting at each other's heels. Monopolies tend to, and I'm not saying in every case, but monopolies tend to slow down and tend to stop innovating. And when there were 12 magazines, there was a big old fight for which one do you pick up on the shelf. So it had to be the best magazine. So it's sad to see that, and whether there is any space left for the paper media, I'm not sure, because obviously you've got Carpology, you've still got the Angling Times in the more general sense, and then and I don't know if you ever see it, but things really specialist stuff like Catch Cult. I don't know if you ever see the Catch Cult magazine. You should look it up. You should look that one up. Catch Cult is really good, and you'd call it kind of proper specimen magazine. And he produces one every kind of quarter. It is, it's this thick, and he still posts it out.
Right.
And Martin Mumby, but fantastic piece, and there's stories from all the kind of specimen guys, the Staggies of the world, Alan Stagg and all those kind of guys, an article on Chubb and an article on Tench, and it's really not, it's a beautiful magazine, it's a proper thick book of a magazine, great quality. And the guy has never ever wanted to offer it as a digital service, which obviously the mainstream magazines now, it's a kind of dual model, in that you can do a digital subscription or a paper subscription. And I still love, I'm a big fan of a book. I still love the smell of books.
100%. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I always struggled with like the Kindle. I could never get on. For anglers, it's great to you'd think, this is really convenient. You can sit there reading on. But I just can't do it. I still want the smell of a book.
Oh, mate, I'm so with you. We had our first family holiday in in August, first one in a few years actually, and I couldn't wait to get poolside and get into a couple of really good books that I'd taken. One on Charles Manson called Chaos, which is a remarkable book, and another one on the power of impulsive thinking. And it was just so nice but I was completely aware of everybody around, or most other people around the pool, either on a Kindle or doom scrolling, and I just thought, it's so nice just to disconnect and go back to, as you said, the smell of a book is just an amazing thing, isn't it?
I'll tell you what. Hold that thought 1 minute. I've actually got something on my desk to show you. So I don't know if we can get this on the camera very well. I don't know if you can see this.
Oh yeah, look at that. When was that printed?
1932.
Oh yeah, look at that.
And it's the old John Players. It's Players cigarettes. And if you look inside it, it's cigarette cards.
Oh, I love that. I can smell it. I can smell it.
You can still smell it. And it's complete. This is completely full, one end to the other, every freshwater fish in the UK. Wow. And I'm not even convinced that some of them aren't extinct.
Yeah.
You know, certainly. Yeah.
It's a thing of beauty.
And this is nearly 100 years old. And this just sits on my desk, and I absolutely love it. And I found that in this really obscure antique shop, and it was £5.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow.
I found this in a really obscure. You know, as an angler, you just spot these things. I could see it, amongst a pile of junk. And it's probably been there for years, and no one was interested. And I beelined for it. Sometimes I literally just pick it up just for the smell.
I totally get you. I tell you who would love that would be my friend Mike Reed. Now, when we did our first Carp Academy social, Mike Reed came along with us. You wouldn't mind me saying he's 78 years old, but you would not think it to look at him. And every time, both times we've done a social, on a social that we just did, he did 17,000 steps going around people's swims, taking them a little glass of Baileys, checking everyone was all right. And he's a force of nature, but he just a credible guy. He sent me a copy of a magazine in the post last week. It's nice when people still post stuff to each other, isn't it? And it's called Classic Angling. You probably might know it. I don't know. I'd never seen it before, but it's he sent it to me principally because he had written an article in there. And Mike, unbeknown to me, is he's got the world's best collection of Mitchell 300 reels.
Jesus.
The world's best. And he has dedicated decades of his life to tracking these down at auction, sometimes in America, sometimes in Europe. He writes this story of where he went to get a suitcase full of euros for meeting a guy in an airport in France who was the nephew of this guy who was the chief technical man at Mitchell. And really amazing story. It was only part one, but he's got some pictures of some of these reels. Do you know what? I'm just going to get it. I'm just going to go and grab it. So I don't know what my camera's like.
I can see that. Yeah, no, it's all good. I can see it's really clear.
So that is the
Mitchells you've never seen.
Yeah, so that is a Mitchell that was commemorating a landmark. It might be the millionth Mitchell 300, and it got hand painted by French school children. And he tracked it down and bought it. And then inside, he's managed to get in his collection, he's got the 10 millionth and the 20 millionth. Look at that white one. With
Jesus, that's incredible. You know, that really is incredible.
It's such a great article because it's about fishing, obviously, but it's like a detective hunt on finding the world's rarest reels. So
I always find, like, you know, fishing in itself can be, you know, and certainly a lot of the wider public think it's boring. But the stories attached to fishing are what makes it fascinating. And when you speak, and I've got a little project on the side which has been going for a couple of years now. I'm kind of gathering stories from the older anglers, you know, the ones that sadly won't be with us for much longer and don't get out on the bank much more, and certainly don't engage in modern platforms like we do. They're probably not going to turn up on Carp Academy. And it's before, you know, these memories are lost. And I think there are certain skills and people who, you know, even people like rod repairers. You know, because rod repair is becoming a skill that will sadly die out, I think, because rod's a disposable item now. And, you know, carbon's, you know, as much as people say fishing's expensive, carbon's cheap compared to what it used to be. No one repairs a rod. You just snap it in half, throw it in the skip, don't you? And some of those old skills, whipping rings onto, whipping out in new rings onto a rod and all those kind of things. I've been gathering a few stories from those anglers over the years, and that's exactly what you've got there, kind of similar experience, and kind of attaching a story to a one Mitchell reel is a fascinating thing, isn't it?
I love
and
that.
you can feel, and funnily enough, one of the other episodes of this of the podcast we've done this series was with David Miller, who painted the rod license art. He paints all of those rod license pictures, and we had quite an in-depth conversation about what we call intrinsic value.
Yeah.
And intrinsic value is obviously the value beyond the obvious. It's not the material cost; it's the memories and the stories and the experiences attached to an item.
Absolutely.
Which, when you look at a painting, when you talk about someone like David. A painting's a painting, and you can sell a copy of it, and you can sell a print of it, and you can do another one, but the original's worth thousands because that the artist painted it, and that his hand was shaking, and it's not just some digital copy of the same thing, and that's it. That's where intrinsic value is added to things. Great. I mean, it's great to see that magazine, and just like the book I just showed you, which is probably what in years to come will just be irreplaceable.
Definitely.
And certainly cigarette cards. You're not going to see many of them anymore, are you?
No.
And obviously a thing of the past, but I remember you probably remember in your childhood, and I do in mine, when you still collected the old card out of a cigarette packet that your parents bought, obviously, guys. But it's really, really great to see.
That sort of that media as well, Rob, that you just touched on. I mean, not preaching to anybody, but the value that I get, especially on these dark winter nights. In fact, I've done it a few times in the summer, from just switching everything off and sitting in my favourite comfy chair and reading a book is immensely enriching and rewarding. And I'd even go so far as to say that if you're struggling with SAD or anything brought on by winter, and just getting into a book, it allows your mind to, when we watch something through a viewable medium, everything is, to an extent, is given to us cerebrally. Like, obviously, if the film's layered in terms of plot and so on, but generally you're just absorbing. Whereas with a book, you have to create that world in your mind as you turn each page. And I mean, a lot of people just think I'm mad with some of my theories, but I think the brain is like a muscle. And I think the more that you use imagination, the more that you use creative elements and layering, the stronger it's getting. And I worry that we're going backwards almost as a species, because we are scrolling through these 15-second things and getting that quick thing. And then it's the next thing, and it's the next thing, and it's nothing of any substance.
I completely agree with you. I've felt it, and I've seen it myself. Since I am probably in that bridge gap really between generations to an extent. At our age, certainly at my age, we were the last generation that didn't have phones. The last generation that never knew what a phone was, and you had to arrange to meet your mates, otherwise no one turned up, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in recent years, because of I've forgotten how to write, because I don't need to write anything anymore. I don't need to physically write anything. And when I have to get a pen, I kind of don't. It feels weird.
Right.
It feels oddly disabled thing in my hand, and I can't write.
Wow.
And when you're talking short form content, and this is the one that really stands out for me, people's attention spans have gone.
Definitely.
And I find that, I find now that I can't sit, unless I'm in the right mood, I can't sit and watch something because I want that instant payoff.
Yeah.
Because I want it in 60 seconds. Because, obviously I'm not the biggest fan of, social media, but a lot of what I do means I have to keep up with, socials and fisheries and anglers and, the latest news. So I'm doing this all day long. And then I find myself watching something longer form, which from a personal point of view, I know that I love. But I'm getting impatient. I want it. I start skipping things. When you watch films now, you start skipping through because you want the payoff. And it's that.
Wow.
And it is that. And if you think about it really hard, I think a lot of society has started to do that, where you want instant payoff in something. And I think it reflects in carp fishing, Adam.
100%.
People want that instant gratification. The instant success, the silver bullet that you spoke about earlier.
Definitely.
For me, fishing when I was coming up in carp fishing was about the journey. And the bit I loved the most was the research. To this day, I think I probably enjoy pre-baiting and markering and all the rest of it more than fishing.
Yeah.
the research, going around a venue and making notes and doing laps around a venue and sitting there, sometimes just sitting there for 8 hours watching for fish. And I still to this day think that is my favourite part. And maybe it's the favourite because it pays off in the end, when you can feel the amount of effort you've put into a campaign.
Yeah, but sometimes it doesn't pay off, but it's still just as strong a memory. So some of my greatest or strongest, most resilient angling memories are the 16th of Junes. And invariably they were...
Which are always rubbish.
almost. I can think of one that was just incredible, but virtually every other one was the biggest anticlimax that you could
awful.
ever imagine.
I've done it, mate. I've done it pre-baiting for 2 months or whatever. You've been you usually, it's a 3-month close season. You usually give yourself a few weeks off, don't you?
Yeah.
And then you probably start campaigning for about 2 months. And every year, those 2 months were a complete waste of your time. But you'd never not do it. The next year, I remember sitting there on many a June the 16th and going, I'm not doing this again. Just go. Next year, I'm just going to go fishing. June the 16th, I'm just going to go fishing.
Yeah.
Next year, same thing again, probably harder. You've actually forgotten how much it hurt. And the next year you think, I'll use more bait. I'll just put more bait in. And you trap yourself. We're in a sport that, and I've covered this with so many anglers that kind of tie this thread together. And one of the attractive things about fishing, carp fishing or any form of fishing, is that it never ends.
Yeah.
There's always a bigger fish, and even when you think you've caught the biggest one, there's a prettier one or a different one or an uglier one. With carp, it's the kind of individuals, but you will never complete fishing.
Definitely.
It's the hobby or the sport that never ends.
It is, and although most of my time is preoccupied with carp fishing, I do love diversifying, particularly in the winter months. And but something really cool, absolutely funny enough, was in this very magazine. There's an article, very small, short article by a guy in Australia, and he's fishing the Melbourne and something canal, and it's tidal and it flows or something, but it's still a canal. I don't know how it all works, but anyway, he's been fly fishing at night. So his sessions start at 8 in the evening and finish at 4 a.m. I'm thinking, what kind of creatures are you encountering out there in the outback anyway at that time of night? But he's in this magazine with a brown trout that was 39.5 pound, and I think it was the IGFA record, or he's pursuing an IGFA record. But he said that they're extremely nocturnal. During the day you get the rainbows and they're more modest size, but these giant brownies come out at night. He said because he's trying to pursue this line class rating record, that he's been smashed by fish which he says are closer to 50 pound than 40 pound. And there's this picture, while we're talking about it, I'll just see if I can find it, where he's holding this incredible looking brown trout, obviously at night. And
I mean, that's insane, Adam. A 40 pound brown trout is insane.
It's astonishing, isn't it? And as a dyed in the wool hardcore carp angler who has got no interest in fly fishing, I thought, do you know what? Roving around in the dark trying to catch giant brownies at night in Australia, and I thought, can you see that?
Lift it up a bit more. I can't see the picture there. Yeah, a bit more. Yeah, I can see. Oh, Jesus, it looks like a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Now that's insane.
So that was just, it's now become a bucket list thing. I thought, if I ever got...
People will say that's AI. They'll say, one of those giant pictures from AI. And I'll tell you what, you touch on a good point there. I think the best anglers, and I don't mean anglers, but the influencers, and I don't want to use the negative connotation of the word influencer, but the ones that really drive the sport can make you want to fish for what you don't usually fish for. Even if you're not a carp angler, but things like your content, because it's so accessible. And I can go do that you just sit there and watch your content and the kind of no frills side of it, and it's real. You sit there and all of a sudden I want to go tie rigs. I'll be out in the shed straight away after one of your films and be tying rigs, because I'm thinking, I'm definitely going tomorrow, kind of thing. And I'll tell you probably the best example of this, and I don't know whether you ever had anything to do with the guy, was Steve Pitts, the eel man.
No,
Um,
I've got a mutual friend who knows him really well, and I've heard a lot about him. I never met
yeah.
him, but he sounds.
Well,
He died, didn't
fortunately, yeah. Sadly enough, he passed
he? Sounded
away, and
fascinating.
yeah, and honestly, I met him in the last year of his life. You know, I'd never known the guy, and I bumped into him last year of his life because he's not actually too far away from me. And obviously, the reason I say it stands out is because it's eels, Adam. It's bloody eels.
Yeah.
No one wants to catch an eel. But I met the guy, and from the very first day, I've never been so mesmerised by an angler. It was like speaking to Jesus.
I've heard this.
Like, you know, and the guy had just this such insane passion for eel fishing.
Yeah.
And obviously, it didn't matter that you don't like eels because you're imagining carp or, you know, whatever your species is. And the guy had fished, for anyone that doesn't know, and I'd recommend you go find his content because I think you'll all be blown away by it. Eventually, he'd caught a 10-pounder, which in eel world is like hen's teeth. That's like catching 10 50-pounders in carp fishing.
Yeah.
You know, a 10-pound eel, I think there's only ever probably been 2 recorded.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think there's been 2 11s and 2 10s, but
Yeah.
you're right.
But like 10 is like, you know, mythological, you know. And one of the things about eel fishing, like the guy had spent 25 years of his life fishing only for eels. And when I say 25 years, and if not more, he fished for them 2 to 3 nights a week every single week of those years, all through the year. In winter, you know, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 150 nights a year. And I mean, the guy, and again, remarkably, the guy had a list of PBs in kind of bycatch that would blow most people away. You know, he like accidentally caught 40-pound carp and thrown them back on really tough venues, you know, when the circuit boys are there fishing away and blanking, and he'd had like a 40-pounder in the night and just chucked it back. And he was that mesmerising that even I wanted to go eel fishing. And
Wow.
I feel so fortunate. And he kind of innovated a lot of those rigs, you know, the rigs to kind of prevent deep hooking of eels. A lot of the kind of, you know, the twig rig, as they call it, and all the rest of it for eel fishing, that were designed to stop deep hooking. You know, he innovated a lot of that with some of the other big kind of anguilla angers. And I met him in the final year of his life, bless him. And then we'd spoke a couple of times afterwards. I was fortunate enough to meet him, and then he fished on a lake near me just to have a bit of fun. Just smaller eels. There were never going to be any monsters there, but it was a bit of his downtime. And I ended up sat with him just on, you know, in the swim, you know, as they call it, in the swim, you know, sat on the steps. And I could have listened to him for like 10 hours. You know, I could have sat and listened to him. And, you know, the most beat up tackle. He hadn't bought anything for about 30 years. You know, his car was like ancient, and the footwell was that deep in dirt, you know, and he could close his eyes and find a hook kind of thing. And
Did he
just
have a
like
family?
he was married, yeah, and he clearly must have had one of the most understanding wives you've ever met in your life, because the guy fished relentlessly. And I tell you what, that really stands out to me, and I don't want to take up most of our podcast talking about another angler, but I said to him, and we were speaking, me and a couple of guys were chatting away with him, and said to him, like, so how long do you give a venue then? Because obviously with carp, for the most part, you know what's in a venue. You're after a target fish, like you've said earlier. You see it in a magazine. You know what's in there. You know the A team, so to speak, in a lot of places. But who knows with eels? There are no named eels, are there? You know, there's no long common eel. You know,
there's that, but also principally the thing that just blows my mind. All of our carp fishing is predicated on what we see. There's an eel. There's another eel. Look, just put his head out. There's one rolled over. Yeah. You're fishing for invisibility. They're ghosts.
Oh, and we've spent so much of this podcast talking about putting the effort into walk the lake and kind of spot fish and all the rest of it. And you literally wouldn't even fish if you'd not found them. And in eel fishing, that's your whole career. You know, that's But this is, and I'll finish on this. But I said to him, like, so how long do you give a venue then once you've set your sign on the venue? And with an absolute straight face, this is nearly enough the exact sentence he said. He said, well, I don't expect to bite the first year. In the second year, I'm kind of thinking I might have one. I start kind of worrying about it in the third year, but I'll probably give it 5 years. Wow. And I was like, hang on. So 2 to 3 nights a week, 150 nights a year.
That's staggering.
And you might get a bite by year 3. and like he had a boyish. Bearing in mind he was getting on at that stage. Obviously, I think he was kind of getting on 70s. Like bearing in mind, he had this boyish look, and I could see like a teenager, And he was like, "The more I blank, the more excited I get,
Right.
because if I was catching, there's probably not a big one in there."
Yes, I've heard this. This story.
You get a lot of
from him
bootlaces,
has been
Yeah. So you get a lot of bootlaces in there. And he said that, and he said, "I get up to like 50 blanks, and I start getting really excited because there's nearly no such thing as a lake with no eels. So if I haven't caught one, it's likely to have them, and they're likely to be big."
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Like I've never, and I don't think
that mindset's unique.
Yeah,
unique.
And I think the real secret, and a lot of people that watched his talk will probably think so. And I was lucky enough to have this personal time with him, just a very tiny bit. And I'm not going to say we were close, but I feel so fortunate that someone opened that gate for me to speak to him a couple of times. But then you apply it to your own fishing, and as we've spoke about, with that kind of effort to walk the lake and not just go in the car park swim as so many people do. And you look at that level, and it's like another level, You just think, well, surely then I can do a few laps of the lake and kind of, look for a few bubblers and wait for them to nose out a little bit, sure. And I've never been so mesmerised, but I don't think I ever will be. I don't think I'll ever find an angler that does the same. And it's an eel,
My friend Simon Garrard, who is a lifelong eel angler, absolute gentleman. We were chatting under the heat of an 85-degree sun at the Horseshoe Open Day this summer, and he was telling me a lot of what you just said. Actually, from his conversation, he was mesmerised by this guy, and Simon is quite mesmerising to talk to. But you related that perfectly, because a lot of the things you just told me were almost
word. And I'm sure, bless him, old Steve probably told the story in exactly the same way to so many people. But
no, I think you've done him proud. It sounds a remarkable character.
The word mesmerise is the one that everyone says the same thing about him.
Yeah.
Everyone uses the word mesmerised, and wow. You kind of felt like, and in a way, you feel like I'm not quite as good an angler anymore, because I feel like I've not quite achieved that, to be fair. But moving on. So let's talk about Adam Penning though, because obviously we're going to round out soon. I don't want to go on too long for you, bless you. It's getting late at night now, but you're obviously a very good angler, and you have been for a very long time, or you wouldn't still be in the sport, certainly at this level. So there's definitely something about Adam Penning that made you a better angler. So just to kind of give us a brief insight into that. One, what is your favourite capture? And I'm sure you've been asked this quite a lot. And two, what is it about your own angling that you think makes it good? What makes Adam Penning a good angler?
The captures that really stand out because they're ingrained, they've left such an indelible mark on me, are always if my angling campaigns, or my perfect angling campaign was a box set, it would be, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it would be season 1 of True Detective.
Yeah.
So
I've seen it. Yeah.
Exquisite, ultimate ending to anything you would ever see, but you have to go through the slow burn process.
You've got to build up to it. You've got to build up in what was quite a slow series.
Really
and
slow.
Then
so I watched it again about a year ago because it's one of my favourites, and my wife wouldn't engage with it because she wants faster moving. She wants to watch Taken or something. She wants a quicker denouement, and very she tried to sort of say, well, can't I just this ending, if it's so amazing, can I just watch that?
But it wouldn't mean anything without the rest of it.
Yeah, I said, no, you can't, actually. You're not watching it, because the whole reason it is so good is because of the build-up. And I just use that as a metaphor, analogy, or whatever, to reflect my own fishing. The more you put into the process, the greater that payoff becomes. So the greatest angling memories will be the long-term campaigns, and probably one that really stands out was in about, let me think now, so it was 1992. I was fishing a lake that was beyond my capability. It was big. It was the first proper big gravel pit I've ever fished, and I'd never at that stage caught a 20-pound carp, and I was working. I caught them up to 19 pound, 14 ounces, but we'd suddenly moved from fishing these small local ponds to the Lee Valley where these great big pits were. And I had a job as a bus driver, and I drove buses around Walthamstow and Hackney and all of that. And I was fairly single at the time, although bus groupies were very much a thing at that, in that era. But the bus driving meant that quite often, if I worked my shifts cleverly, I could do them so that I had a 4-day gap. So what I used to do was, and it shows how much things have changed. You could go down to, I went down to the lake, I set up my 50-inch brolly with an overwrap in an area that seemed favourable, and I left it there for the whole summer. And I used to go to work. When I finished my shift, I would go straight back to the lake, fish for the night. And if I had to go to work the next day, I'll go home, have a shower, and then drive down to Walthamstow from Harlow, go to work. And the cycle was literally just that. I rolled bait on the bank, used to put out sheets of plastic and get the pan of boiling water over the Coleman, and we'd get dog walkers to come and help us roll the baits. And it was this fully immersive dream summer of embarking on a campaign which obviously I didn't know was ever going to come to fruition. But one day, it was August the 14th of that year, and there was, almost like today, cataclysmic torrential downpour of rain, movie rain as I call it, and it came down, and the streets of London were flooded, and it was quite a thing. And when I finished my shift, I'd been doing a lot of back-to-back shifts and fishing. I had more energy then, and I did contemplate, as I finished my shift at about 11 o'clock that night, I thought, you know what, I want to just go home and sleep in a bed. The camp's going to, because bivvies they weren't waterproof then. I knew that my sleeping bag was going to be wet. The whole camp was going to be destitute. And I thought, no, you ain't going to catch the carp that you want to catch, which I didn't even know existed, because there were no pictures or anything. We just thought there must be big carp in there. Unless you've got rods out. So I went to the lake, unzipped the bivvy. I used to break my rods in half, put them underneath the bed or behind the bed chair, put my rods back together, cast out in the dark. It was about midnight. Everything was drenched. And this old cold, rusty tin of ravioli with a rusty spoon. I was sitting there with water dripping off my nose thinking, what are you doing? And bearing in mind that I was, 21 years old or 22 years old, and there were other things of interest other than just fishing, principally women. I'm thinking, what am I doing? I should be down a pub or something. And the very next morning, I got the bite that I wanted, and it was this mirror carp that was 21 pounds and 10 ounces. The Bitech Viper, the sounder box was going, and I'd gone into a really deep sleep, and I remember ripping open the bivvy door, because I had zipped it down because the weather was so bad, and by then it was about 1 a.m, probably by I went to bed, and I'd gone into this coma. And when I ripped the door open, it was east facing, and the sun was just like a massive ball of furnace
straight in your eyeballs.
Yeah, burnt my retinas out. And then I did battle with this fish, which, as I say, turned out to be 21.10, my first 20. But it was kind of, again, that the memories that really, really stay with you are the ones that you jump through hoops to get to.
I can see it now, Adam. I can see, it's a 21 pound. And these days you wouldn't even blink at it, would you?
No.
And you can still remember what day it was, the exact pounds and ounces it was, how wet it was, the sun in the morning. So it clearly sticks with you. And yet, as you're about to say kind of thing, I can remember the exact same. It's like I said earlier about the day I nearly never went for that river carp.
Exactly.
The day I nearly didn't go, and I thought, no, you won't catch it if you sat at home, kind of thing. And it's the exact same story. And don't you get the impression, and obviously there's so many anglers that speak about this, back in the early days, when we were fishing in the 90s and the early 2000s, probably half of us should be dead, because we fished in such ridiculous conditions, soaking wet. We should have had hypothermia, we should have frozen to death, burned to death. I've had sunburn that bad I couldn't lay down for a week. Things like that. And, we probably should have starved to death, burned to death, frozen to death, And these days, there's kind of no excuse these days, is there, Adam? Because if you look at the tackle that's available these days, and not just the fishing industry, but the outdoor stuff, it's nearly like a hotel. You
I
know,
think
when you can have a bivvy and a 5-season sleeping bag and a cover and a heater and,
yeah,
you know, all the rest of it.
yeah.
Do you think it actually makes, interesting point, I'll ask you a question, put you on the spot. Does it make anglers worse?
Yes.
And it's always going to be a simplification, obviously, but yes, to an extent.
But at the same time, there's no getting away from the fact that someone like Steve Pitts or Terry Lampard, who I knew really well,
Yeah.
both they didn't die really old men, and you can't help but wonder if the endless pursuit of fish in conditions which really you're living like a homeless person for a lot of it. If you're someone like Terry, who
genuinely is, you know,
Yeah.
I'm a very kind of basic, you know, I will go with what I can carry in a bag rather than a barrow. You know, if I can, I'll get away with it under my arm. So you're talking a basic brolly and a little bit of a cover. And I mean, I didn't take a stove for 10 years. You know, I was just drinking one drink and I had a flask and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
So I get it, you know, the people like Terry Lampard, and obviously, you know, Terry Lampard's like chub films and stuff were immense.
Oh, incredible!
Magic.
You just, I mean, who knows what? I just think that a lifetime of following an outdoor passion in all seasons is going to take its toll to some extent. It must do, and
I mean, it can't be good for you, can it?
It can't be. And I only mentioned, I can think of loads of other examples. I remember, actually, I don't know if he said it publicly, so I won't say his name, but a good friend of mine who's got a big platform, he went out to a lake in France and fished for 6 weeks non-stop. And he told me he didn't brush his teeth for any of it. And I thought, you can't, you've got to, you ain't going to do that for all your years. You know, you've got to, even if it's like putting down a ground sheet now, from now until March, I'll put down a ground sheet. I used to go, ground sheet, what are you, a pussy? You don't have to worry about that. But it's going back to what you said about the technological advancements. You know, we used to just go fishing in a pair of jeans, and if it was cold, we'd put 2 pairs of jeans on.
Yeah.
And they were just like the worst things, and welly boots. And now I've just got a new Fortis coat, which is, North Face level. It's some of the stuff. There's no excuse to be cold or uncomfortable. And I think,
oh mate, some of them feel like they're actually heated and they're not.
Yeah.
You put, I've got, and these are really popular things, but the old muck boots. Muck boots Arctic Sport, which are obviously your Arctic wellies, and when you put them on, it actually feels like someone's warming your feet up.
Ooh, nice.
It actually feels like your feet are warmer than the environment, which is technically impossible. You can't actually be in excess of the temperature.
They sound good. How much are they?
Oh, brilliant! Oh, they're just over a ton, so you're paying 100-odd quid for them. And I've got big feet. I've got size 15 feet. So,
what?
I'm a big old boy. So I'm 6'3", 6'4",
Right.
and size 15, especially in wellies. I can get away with a 14 in some things, but with wellies you need a bit of room for the old socks and stuff as well, don't you? But just like you, I remember wearing like the cheapest pair of boots that you could get because you were wrecking them all the time. We're out fishing and wrecking everything, and just had like 3 pairs of normal socks on. You just put another pair and another pair and another pair, and you'd have a pair of jeans and maybe a cheap pair of waterproofs.
Yeah.
And we fished in some absolute diabolical stuff, didn't we? And the brolly probably had a hole in it. And if you were lucky, you had a brolly that didn't have a hole in it, and that was high tech.
Oh, very much.
Because it was still intact.
Yeah.
But these days, obviously, you're talking bivvies, wraps on a bivvy, over wraps, skins on it, and obviously, like you say, a sleeping bag, heated sleeping bag, USB powered heating, and and you've got remote controlled and motion sensor bivvy lights, and you've got 2 stoves, and all the rest of it. And there, like you say, there's absolutely no excuse to not be comfortable, and that should make better anglers, because that you've removed the excuse that you were going to die. You removed the hypothermia, and I've gone home. I remember going fishing, and one winter I was obsessed with catching in the snow, and I remember sitting one day in the snow, and it was driving at my back. It was about 3 foot deep on the brolly.
Oh, wow.
in the snow drifts, and I just packed. And I sat there, and you have that one moment, and you think, "What are you doing?" And I just went home, and I remember I couldn't even unlock my car because I couldn't use my fingers enough to actually. And I was like, smashing my keys to try and get it to unlock, and I was nearly crying. I was that upset about it because I was in pain. When your fingers start to ache, and but with the amount of kit we've got, technically it should remove the excuse, shouldn't it? And people should fish better and harder, and it's sadly enough, in a lot of cases, it goes the other way because it just makes anglers lazier,
too comfortable.
Too comfortable. And instead of being on the move, you're actually just the bivvy zipped up, and you've got the iPad out, and you're watching True Detectives. You're watching you're watching a full-on TV series. And obviously, power banks. You've got massive power banks now. So your phone never dies, whereas before, and obviously we're talking pre-phone in a lot of these stories, but even when you had phones, everything died after a few hours. You had no power left, but now you've got unlimited power.
Yeah, 2 levels of snake, and you would be on 1 bar.
Yeah.
That was where we were.
Well, now we've got, I've got, it's sat on my desk charging now. I've got the old Ridge Monkey power bank recharging, and that'll do my laptop and phone for like 4 days. So there's no excuse to switch off. And I'd love that wasn't true. That we'd all just fished harder because we got better gear. And the same with terminal tackle, the same with boilies. Technically, high tech fishing should have made us better, and it's probably made us worse, sadly.
Definitely.
So another kind of semi-related question: do you think there's anything unknown and undone left in carp fishing? Because obviously, like we touched on, it's a circuit. You've got the circuit waters, and you've got the known fish, and you've got the and carp fishing by reputation kind of became a game of how much you could afford rather than what you could find. If you wanted to go that next level to a 40 and then a 50 and then a 60, it was basically money. It was an investment in the ticket. As opposed to doing anything new. Do you think there's anything new left in it?
There are certainly unknown, uncaught big fish out there. There are still some lakes that either have been left fallow for a decade or two, or that are just lost in the mist of time. So I'm a real endless, incurable romantic, really. So I like to imagine and think about those being out there, and I'm sure they actually are. Do I think that there are tactically? I'm certain that there are bait edges out there that have not been revealed yet. Things that possibly even things that are available in supermarkets or available from whole food suppliers, powders or liquids.
The famous one is and it comes up. And funny enough, I chatted with a couple of the lads at the Institute of Fisheries Management a few months ago. The hormone story comes up every year, doesn't it? There's a magic hormone that you can buy from a horse feed supplier or something. That's basically like crack to carp, and you start using this hormone, and it's really interesting. But do you really want that? I suppose if you had an instant, dip it in piranha reaction to bait, would you really be much of an angler? Are you much of an angler if it's magnetic? It's like heroin to carp kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that certainly wouldn't appeal to me. I do describe myself as a bit of a piscatorial masochist insofar as I don't want it to be too easy, because if it's too easy, it just, again, it's that thrill of the chase, the hunt, the amount that you put into something, and if it became too attainable without any effort, then it would lose a lot of its meaning for me, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I've had this terrible habit, and I've kind of tried. I think I've probably grown out of it a little bit because of how busy we are these days. When it came to winter, I would go after the target fish. Which is, everyone would tell you not to. Fish a runs water, or not even a runs water, but somewhere where you'll get bites in the winter kind of thing. And for me, I'd go for the campaign over winter. And you've got nearly no chance of catching it.
Yeah.
But, the venue, winter looks lovely. No one's around. It's more peaceful. You get the place to yourself. You're not fighting over swims or worried that someone's going to be sat on your bait or, whatever it is. But I fell into the trap year after year of doing the campaign. As soon as it got cold, I campaigned, and I was like, Not that I remember, to be fair. I've obviously had good times and caught plenty of fish, but I can't remember ever catching the fish out, on a winter campaign.
Or if you do that exactly as you just described, you'll get the fish, but it'll be in March or the beginning.
Oh yeah, it'll be spring. You've just had a long build up to spring kind of thing. You'll get it, as the sun turns and they start, the sun starts shining on those shallow areas, and when the weed starts to come up in spring, and basically you've still wasted your time, but you loved every minute of it. And it was better than doing something else, wasn't it? It's better than doing anything else, and that's why we still do it. Anyway, I suppose we better try and round off, Adam. I think we could go for days, I think. Really,
well, do you know what, actually, Rob? It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I could and would very happily do another couple of hours. The only reason that I am going to fold this up with you when you decide shortly is because my son has just got into The Simpsons. And he's only 11, and so we've gone right back to season 1, and we've done the first 2, and we're going to watch a couple more episodes.
Oh, that's amazing! If you could go back and watch The Simpsons again yourself, because it was generationally brilliant, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
You couldn't describe it. But yeah, so we'll wrap it up for tonight. It's been a real pleasure talking to you in two halves, Adam. Real fascinating insight into a fantastic angler. Talking about what is a brilliant, platform in Penning's Carp Academy, and long may it continue. I'd like to think we'll kind of hopefully drive some subscribers your way, as we spoke about earlier. Everyone, you can get a 10% discount on your first year with Penning's Carp Academy. If you don't know how to, then please get in touch with your club. You can find details in the comments here, but get in touch with your club or fishery to find out how to join Penning's Carp Academy. Thank you very much, Adam. Hopefully we're going to go fishing soon. I think we're going to get a trip organised over this winter, aren't we? So
yeah, thank you very much for asking me on, Rob. I really enjoyed our chat, and we'll do some trotting for roach and perch and that in the winter, or quiver tipping for chub. I would definitely like that. So thank you for the invitation.
No, pleasure. And we will speak to you again soon, Adam. Thank you very much. And for everyone that's watching, thank you very much for joining us on another episode. We will catch you all next time.
Thanks for listening. Join us next time for another episode of the Casting Forward podcast, brought to you by Clubmate. And if you haven't already, click the subscribe button now and follow us for more.